It's YouTube Wednesday. Frankenstein, head and hands. I'm doing Frankenstein. I used only Boris Karloff for my reference. I'm not going for an exact likeness because I don't think I'm capable of it in clay, let alone in foam. But if we don't try, we don't know, right? I'm starting the exact same way that I always do. Putting on a general layer, which sounds like a Star Wars villain. It's not super important to me right now that I get coverage over every single bit. What's important is that I'm controlling my stream, and this layer where it's not important is important. But it's important because while I'm putting this on, I'm learning the flow of the can and of the foam. I'm getting this down before I really have to, because later, when I'm doing like eye bags and stuff, I need to be real precise. I'm gonna learn that precision while I'm doing this. This is going to be obviously a prop head on a wig head. I'm gonna do a set of hands for this also out of Loctite. So this will be a head and hands that you can build a figure with, a static figure. I've done this before for like a fake wax museum that I did, and I was pretty darn happy with how these came out. See how I'm just fixing those little holes? I'm not worried about overlap too much. That'll all be fixed in that next stage. So I have a fan right here blowing the gas away from me so I'm not breathing in. Like I smell nothing, and that's important. So why do I need a foam layer if this guy is based out in foam? Because Frankenstein's big, that's why. I'm adding water to this so that helps the foam cure. Normally this foam will cure by pulling moisture from the air, and now it's actually, I'm adding the water and that's making it cure much faster, and the water I add goes onto the surface, and that makes the surface cure faster than the outside. I'm adding that layer of foam just to beef it up a bit before I really even start doing any details. It's just not big enough. And I'm gonna do probably one more layer to bulk this out, and I'm starting to look at head shape. This is my best front on look. Frank has, from his brow to his nose, appears to be much longer. So I've got to add on a bit for a jaw. And now I'm starting head shape. Until I'm squeezing the trigger more, I'm getting a taller bead. I want that taller bead because I am making the crown here of Frankenstein's head. Countdown 2 minutes. So I know I'm gonna put hair on it in the back. I'm not too worried about these ropes and stuff back here because they'll barely be seen. But if I can work on my technique of getting rid of them back here when I have to do it up front, I'll be better at it, hopefully. I really don't want to get it on my skin too much. Try and leave it off your hands as best as possible. I want a corner here, so I'm pushing down on the top and up in the front. You should be able to touch it without getting any on your fingers. If it's sticking to your fingers, stop touching it. A lot of people have reported, I'm getting it all over my hands and I'm making a mess. Well, don't. Let it skin. It will skin. That's what the material does. Give it time to do its work. Just pushing in that jawline. Okay, with this square jaw, I'm heading a little more into Glenn Strange territory. That's okay. He was also Frankenstein. And it's important to remember when you are judging my work, Frankenstein was made from diseased flesh, dead flesh, so some rotting is bound to occur. I'm not unhappy with it at this point, but I want to let this firm up a little so I can add a little more on and then keep going. I am happy with the general brow shape. If I don't start forming a nose right now, I'll be in trouble. Okay, I'm gonna let this get firm, and I'll be back in just a moment or two, a few minutes. Okay, the trick is to not go too detailed on that first pass because I want to have room to add stuff. Always take this lump off. That sort of seals you up. I could keep adding and add more for the ears and stuff, but that's about all I can manage. I don't know in the time that I've got, I'll be able to control everything that I already have. And this is just me filling divots up there. 2 minutes in, I should be able to fill the divots By the time I get to 3 minutes, I should be able to have some finer control. Have a loop tool. I'm not going to use it for the loop. I'm going to use it for the pushing wire, and I'll just be able to push in some details, I hope. A lot of sculpting is just looking at your images and really learning. There's a very influential scar, I guess, but there's a very well-known scar right up here for Frank. And I like, in this image, it looks a little busted open. And if I recall, Jack Pierce did a build-up makeup every time that Boris was Frankenstein. So yeah, sometimes it's gonna look a little different, and that's okay. One of the reasons why Pierce didn't stay head of makeup longer was that he didn't want to go to prosthetics. He wanted to build it up every time. And that's just a longer process, a more expensive process, because you're adding a lot of time. For you, time for the artist in the chair, time for the actor, I should say, in the chair. All right, I've filled in my holes up there pretty good. I don't have any big divots. Now I've really got to start working on this nose. So my goal here is to do the minimum to get these face shapes on. I don't want huge, massive sculpting happening. I need to get the impression, the idea of the shape of that nose. How much does the nose hang down over the nostrils? How much does it flare out? It's a fun medium, but it's not a forgiving medium. This is so new, and I'm waiting, honestly, for someone to come along that isn't me to really put this material through its paces. Your corners of the mouth are normally right under your pupil. I was okay with my chin until I checked my profile, and it threw me really out of whack. So they say that the ears are not brother and sister. They're not brothers, they're cousins, because two ears don't really look alike. And I think on Frankenstein, luckily, that could even be more the case. Okay, I'm gonna leave that ear alone right now. This little piece that fell down, I wanted to beef up the bottom lip with it a little bit, but that piece fell on the table, and I was still able to get it to work for our needs. All right, this ear is really high. And I used this to fill in a little divot back here. So here is the beauty of this. If I really don't like this Frankenstein, and right now I'm not, I don't like him very much, then I'm gonna be able to just do this again for 12 bucks or whatever it is. Well, no, a can of this is like $8. I used a wig head I already had, so I'm gonna be out 8 bucks and maybe an hour of my time, hour and a half. I have the end of a wooden tool that's pretty smooth and flat. I'll try to do a little smoothing with it with the heat gun. I'd say to a degree, that works. Doesn't get rid of all the texture, but it certainly gets rid of the lumps and changes the texture. Just that little less textured, I think, is helping. A lot of texture in here I'd like to get rid of. Foam gets warm, but doesn't really get that hot because it's insulation, so it handles that heat really well. I have the material on the ears. I just want to put on a little bit here. This is just to make up for an imbalance that I see. I want a little more material on this side of the neck. I'm pretty happy with them. Once I get the eyes in, I'll know where I need to be. That does get it a lot smoother. Way less texture. I feel like I'm gonna be good on this ear now. Always a busy time here in the shop. So if you have foam on your finger and you touch the foam with the skin, it'll still stick and it causes a problem area. If you get it on your finger, you want to get it off right away just by rubbing it. And now I'm able to touch and it's not sticking to me. Boris had some ears, so this Frankenstein kind of has some ears. I want to pull these up a little bit because it's just hanging too low. Do your ears hang low? Can you swing them to and fro? Can you tie them in a knot? Can you tie them in a bow? I got a hole in the side of his head, which I don't like. Set a Frankenstein timer for 2 minutes. All I have to do now is remember where all I put foam. If you forget it, it won't help you. See, I forgot this piece. I never smoothed it out. Frankenstein is looking much more even in the neck. I like that. I'm not happy with the jaw. I think I want to bring the jaw down a little more. I don't want too much space in between the bottom lip and the chin, but I feel like his head should be a little longer. So I'm going to go ahead and add it. Remember that divot? I'm just filling in that divot that I didn't like. So this is a way to make a head quickly. If I want a Frankenstein prop head, 90% of the time, I'm going to sculpt it in clay. I'm going to make a plaster mold. I'll make a latex pool inside of that mold. I'll fill that with foam, and then I'll have a solid sculpted Frankenstein head. That way it's going to take you 8 to 16 hours total. This is kind of a quick and dirty way. This way I can have a passable Frankenstein head, but I'll have a passable Frankenstein head in a couple hours. Literally start to finish, I might have 4 hours in this head. And if you're not comfortable molding, then this is not a bad way to go. And there's no reason why you can't do a basic shape with this, then go on top of that with paper clay or paper mache or something else if you want. How smooth you get it a lot of the time depends on just how much you're touching it. I can get it kind of silky smooth if I work with it over and over again in the same spot. Okay, I don't hate this. I'm moving on to eyes. They look really weird right now, but I've got to go in and shape them and all that. I'm just manipulating the material the way that I want it to go. Where I want the corner of the eye, I'm pushing that corner of the eye back to where I want it. I'm not letting it do what I wanted it to do. I'm making it do what I want it to do. I'm forcing it to my will. Frankenstein has these sad, puffy eyes, real heavy lids up top. You know it's Frankenstein. It don't look like Boris Karloff, but like, yeah, that's Frankenstein. He looks a little sad, which is kind of good for Frankenstein. I'm curious as to whether or not I mess with that mouth anymore. I like that mouth. It's not terrible, but I think I could do better. So that's what all of us should ask ourselves. And if you think you can do better, then you should try to do better. I'd rather this be as good as I could have gotten it. Looks like you now have the 70s cop mustache.
Yeah, look.
So the little pieces that hit the table that aren't cured yet, while I'm waiting, you'll notice I pick these up a lot and I play with them because I want to see what the material can do. If I can learn from my scraps and throwaway pieces, that's great. I just made a witch hat for a G.I. Joe figure right there. And here I made a little tooth with a root. And here I made a white Cheeto. Forbidden Cheeto. See this little bit of build up here, giving him a little bit of a muzzle, a little bit of a nasal labial fold. And why wouldn't Frankenstein have a little bit of a hair lip? Just a little bit of one. Let's put that in there. I think he probably had some palate surgery. I think that filled in a lot better, and I really like that more. I'm really glad that I did that. And I almost didn't take the chance because I didn't want to mess it up. And a lot of times we deny our art the chance to be even better because we're afraid to mess it up from where it is. But we got to where it is, and we have the idea that it could be better. So why wouldn't we listen to that? And I realize I'm saying that as if all artists think that way, but I know a significant amount of them do. Boy, that's got great texture to it. Let's get this guy out of the way and start doing the hands. I'm not worried about posing his hands. I know that I can pose them later with heat, so I'm worried that they're going to be big enough. So one of the secrets to Frankenstein is to make his jackets look too large or smaller than they should be. You leave a lot of wrist hanging out. So I got to make sure there's plenty of wrist on this or it's not Frankenstein. I'm not laying this out. These are just hands. Hands are notoriously one of the hardest things to draw and sculpt, but I have a good model right here, which is what I mentally did when I laid this one out. So now I have to do this. I'm not measuring anything. I don't think I need to measure anything. Not because I'm an amazing artist and I have all this crap memorized, but it's Frankenstein hands, man. It'll be okay. Take your time on the face, get that right, and make sure your hands are big enough. This is a can of Loctite that was just laying around. I think someone else used it and made the mistake of sitting it near me. This is the second can of Loctite that I opened. Or was this my first one? This is my first can that I said was empty. This is the can I just set down that I finished up the head with. It's got plenty in it. So as long as I don't use all of this, I'm gonna say Frankenstein took 2 cans, which is probably very safe. Probably shouldn't have done that. I probably should have laid out 1 hand at a time, because now I have to make sure that I get 2 hands done in the time before it goes too stiff to use. I'm not doing a lot with this, just flattening that out. That's my first step. I want a smoother base. I don't mind a little bit of texture. It is Frankenstein. Okay, doubling down, here we go. Nope, not yet. This one's still wet. If your hands are 2 different sizes, it's Frankenstein. One's from some dude, one's from some other dude. There's some bones on the wrist that I wanted to make sure were represented. These are representing some of the carpals that are visible through the skin on skinnier people. Frankenstein got some big digits, yo. This one has sat long enough, and I can work on this hand. Yeah, I'm pretty okay with that. And I did not use a clean sheet of plastic. Sometimes if you don't use clean plastic, then you can have issues with the foam sticking, but that's not bad. I can push and make a knuckle. I can squeeze that finger together, push it down to show the bone, make a little bubble, that's a knuckle. Show the bone, knuckle, 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 bone, bone, knuckle. I have a nice hard skin on there, so I can work this foam more without worrying about breaking it. Knuckle, 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 knuckle. I finally have a good skin on the underside of this. I want to condense this hand a little bit. He got a little cray-cray. I can curve this because I can add foam in here later, and that gives me a nice round on the back of the arm. You'll see I'm working at a little bit of a frantic pace. Like I'm working, I'm going, because this foam is on a timer, you know? This will stop being malleable after a time, and I won't be able to do as much. Yes, I can manipulate it to a degree with heat, but not to the same degree that I can right now. What's that? This is so corpsey. That's what this material is like. It's like a 1/4 inch of pine wood over top of couch foam right now. I mean, right now it's still shapeable, but I want to hold it in that shape if that's what I want it to do. And I want to get these pretty well shaped, and then I will fill in the backs of them as needed. Okay, so you know who had hands this big? I met Peter Mayhew one time, and I shook his hand, and his hand just wrapped around mine easily, just like this. This reminds me of Peter Mayhew, who was passed. He played Chewbacca. I met him at a convention. We weren't like friends or anything. Being a wolf man for most of my life, professionally, I tend to like Peter Mayhew, who played a furry dude. I'm arm wrestling Frankenstein. So I can just fill in the back of the hand, no problem. I did not set a timer. I'm going by the seat of my pants. Everyone is shocked. This is really only to fill this out. I have all the shape and the strength from the other side. With Frankenstein, you need enough wrist to stick out of the coat, like 2 or 3 inches of wrist, to show that he has long, gangly arms. So there's like this tendon that shows up. Apparently not everybody has that. I'm just putting a little tendon in here, get a little bit of tension in that wrist. So you push on one part and it puffs up the other part. You just have to kind of monitor it. All right, I'm waiting on these guys to firm up. I'm actually fairly happy with their positioning. I might reheat a few of the fingers and move them. I'm gonna give this a good 20 minutes or so that I can paint them when I get back. Just that's not a clean end. I want a cleaner end. A lot of the weird specialty knives that I use and things are on my Amazon store. I will start linking in the first comment. If you buy something from there, I get a little tiny kickback. It's like 2%, but every little bit helps. And if you want to support the channel, that's another way to do it. You don't have to join Patreon, cough cough, or any of the other stuff. For the sake of speed, I'm going to use an airbrush. You don't have to. First thing I have to do is paint the wrists of the hands. I'm painting these now so that when my head is painted, I can pick these up by the wrist and paint the rest of the hand. So I'm not wasting any time waiting on something to dry. So Frankenstein, this is the biggie. Like, this is a core monster. There is a theory that there's only two monsters. Everything else is nature. The first monster is Wolfman, and that is the monster that's inside of us. Every person has the capability for violence. They have the capability to become a monster, and that's inside of you, and that's innate. And then there is the monster that we made, and that's Frankenstein. This is Frankenstein. Is this Frankenstein's monster? Yes. It's also Frankenstein's monster, but you'd be better served saying it's Dr. Frankenstein's monster. Dr. Frankenstein didn't go to 12 years of medical school to not be called doctor. This is Frankenstein. 100%, it is okay to call him that. And it's not okay to bully people who say Frankenstein when they talk about him. I don't know when this started, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. This is Frankenstein. How do I know this is Frankenstein? How can I say this name is Frankenstein when in one early version of the book, his name was supposed to be Adam? Why is he Frankenstein? Because there's over 1,000 movies that have a picture of him and it says Frankenstein right under it. That's a title. They're labeling him. It's his movie. He's Frankenstein. Thousands of movies. They're not all wrong. And if you only have one book and I have 1,000 movies, I think I have more backup than you. But is it acceptable to call this Frankenstein? Yes. And then you call Dr. Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, because he's the doctor. I'm a monster guy, so I have opinions. These don't have to flex. You can use any kind of acrylic paint on them. I'm using latex mask paint because I have a bunch of that laying around, because I use that the most in my daily life. Now I'm pretty sure I'm out of paint. Very important paint shaking technique, the zombie snail. My paint is in here. I've got white and green together. Open lid against your palm. Thumb goes underneath. These two fingers go down, making the zombie snail. What do zombie snails do? Attack. And now your paint is shaken. I want to give all these parts about 15-20 minutes to dry, and then I will come back and do the airbrushing on him. Guy needs some hair. 15 inches there, 9 inches by 15 inches. And now I have to account for the ears. Say 3.5 down, 2.5 back. What I also need is a sharp knife. Always, always, always test fit your pieces before gluing, because I have no idea if this is going to fit or not. Since I don't know if this is going to fit, I should not glue it down until I do just a nice test. I mean, I didn't do that, but you probably should. I have haired many, many Frankensteins. Because of their short hair, kinda, fake fur looks actually pretty good for them. Now we know it's Frankenstein. So I happen to have some eyes that I think are perfect for Frank. It's these guys here. So I'm gonna put these eyes in him. I was not thinking about that at all when I built him. There has to be some modification that happens to make those eyes work. And I'll go in with hot glue probably and seal this up a bit. This should get me where I can at least get the eye in. Frankenstein is not a prop that you can go bug-eyed with either. He is very heavy lidded, so I'll probably have to add some material to fix that heavy liddedness. When I did a lot of figures for a wax museum, I actually just sculpted the area around the eye with oil-based clay, which just stayed a little soft, but it's pretty firm clay. And then that just stayed in as the material. I've got my hot glue gun set at a very low temperature, so I can run little beads with this as opposed to it coming out like a liquid. When I get back to it, I'm gonna give it 5 minutes and see if I need to do anything else. Five minutes. A drop of black won't darken this. It will make it grayer. It'll make it deader, which is what I want. Still want this to be a light color, but I don't want it to be a lively spring green. I want it to be like a pale, dead green. So this is a good time to mention this Frankenstein head and hand set, which I hope someone out there wants to turn into a figure or a ground burster or whatever. I'm giving it away on Patreon. If you are a Patreon member, this will be given away on October 10th. If you are a member of Patreon by October 10th, any level, you will be able to win this Frankenstein head and hand set. I wanted to make a head and hands to show you guys that A, you could make hands out of this to match whatever head you make. That's the hard part of almost any static figure. So if you want to make a Frankenstein static figure, you can make a head and hands just out of Loctite foam. I used 2 cans. That puts the cost at $16. Add a little bit for eyes, a little bit for hair, a little bit for paint. You're looking at $25 probably for everything. So this is a good, inexpensive way. Is it a sculpted and molded figure? No. But is it fun, awesome, and looks good in low light? Yeah. Anybody who joins Patreon by October 10th could win this Frankenstein head and hand set. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Go make stuff.
Now it's time for some Patreon shout-outs. Cindy Canfield, Bernadette Heath, Heather Angel, Jordan Jackson, Funky Ferret Studios, Darlene Jeffers, Leonie Irwera, Sean Tucker, Sean Fenner, and Jack Hunter. And a huge thank you to all our new subscribers. As always, go make stuff.